History tells the same story again and again. Every civilization believed it would be the exception. But beneath the surface, the mechanisms that sustain modern society may already be showing signs of stress. What most people never realize is that civilizations often appear strongest just before their greatest vulnerabilities are exposed. The question is not whether civilizations decline. The question is whether we can recognize the signs before it is too late. Every civilization begins to believe that its success is permanent, that the systems surrounding it are too advanced, too powerful, and too interconnected to ever truly fail. Prosperity creates confidence, and confidence slowly evolves into certainty. The greater the success, the harder it becomes to imagine decline. Across history, every empire believed it had discovered a formula for lasting stability, yet history repeatedly delivered the same verdict.
Modern civilization appears stronger than any society that came before it, supported by technologies and networks previous generations could never imagine.
For most people, stability feels natural because it is all they have ever known. Yet the citizens of past civilizations felt exactly the same way, unaware that the foundations beneath them were already beginning to shift.
The strength of any civilization depends not on what is visible above the surface, but on the foundations supporting everything else. The more complex a system becomes, the more difficult it becomes to recognize its vulnerabilities.
And this is where our story begins, not with collapse itself, but with the dangerous belief that collapse could never happen here. Success is often celebrated as the ultimate achievement of civilization, but history suggests that prosperity can become—
The more comfortable a civilization becomes, the more it begins to assume that abundance is permanent rather than temporary.
Prosperity encourages growth, and growth rewards efficiency. Yet beneath the surface, efficiency— As wealth accumulates, societies begin to believe that future success is guaranteed because recent success feels unstoppable. Prosperity changes expectations. What was once considered a luxury gradually becomes viewed as a necessity. Many of history's most powerful civilizations experienced their greatest prosperity shortly before encountering their greatest challenges. The rewards of prosperity are rarely distributed evenly, and this is where hidden pressures often begin to form. The larger a civilization becomes, the more resources it requires simply to maintain the standard of living people have come to expect. What appears to be unstoppable growth can sometimes conceal structural weaknesses that remain invisible during good times. Prosperity is not dangerous because it creates wealth. It becomes dangerous when a civilization mistakes temporary success for permanent security. Every civilization borrows from the future. The danger begins when the future can no longer afford the promises being made in the present. Supports. Debt itself is not the enemy. For generations, it has helped societies build roads, cities, and industries.
When growth slows and obligations continue to expand, borrowing begins to shift from investment into survival.
What starts as a tool for opportunity gradually becomes a system of dependence woven into nearly every layer of society.
The more debt accumulates, the more economic stability becomes dependent on keeping the borrowing cycle alive. Debt allows civilizations to bring future consumption into the present, but eventually the bill arrives, and the future begins demanding repayment.
Many civilizations discovered that excessive borrowing can create the illusion of strength, long after the foundations supporting that strength have begun to weaken. The debt machine rewards expansion because expansion delays consequences, but every cycle requires even greater borrowing simply to maintain momentum. The most dangerous phase of a debt cycle often arrives when everything still appears stable on the surface. Warning sign number 1 is not simply debt itself. It is a civilization becoming dependent on debt to sustain the illusion of prosperity. Debt does not operate as a single decision. It becomes a machine, a system designed to keep moving forward. Governments often borrow because reducing spending carries immediate political costs, while borrowing pushes the consequences into the future. Corporations borrow to expand, acquire competitors, increase profits, and satisfy investors who expect constant growth in an increasingly competitive world. Just relaxes. Households borrow for reasons that often feel unavoidable. Homes, education, healthcare, and opportunity. Individually, each loan may appear manageable. Together, they create an interconnected web that binds the entire economy to the continuation of borrowing. When growth begins to slow, financial authorities often face a difficult choice: allow pain in the present or encourage more borrowing to postpone it. The debt machine works remarkably well during periods of expansion. Rising incomes and rising asset prices make growing obligations appear sustainable.
The problem emerges when a system becomes so dependent on debt that reducing it threatens the stability of everything built upon it.
At that stage, even small disruptions can force leaders to choose between short-term stability and long-term sustainability.
And this is where the system becomes dangerous. The debt machine no longer exists to serve prosperity.
Wealth has always existed in every civilization. The warning sign emerges when prosperity continues growing, but fewer and fewer people share in its rewards.
Fragility 6. In the early stages, inequality often appears as a natural consequence of success. But over time, concentration can
For millions of people, the challenge is not absolute poverty. It is the growing gap between effort and opportunity. History repeatedly shows that civilizations become vulnerable when large portions of the population begin to feel disconnected from the prosperity surrounding them. Danger is not wealth itself. The danger emerges when economic systems appear increasingly designed to reward ownership rather than participation. When upward mobility begins to slow, confidence in the future starts to weaken, even if overall wealth continues to rise. Economic concentration often evolves into political and institutional influence, shaping the rules that govern the system itself. Legends. Warning sign number 2 is not simply inequality. It is a civilization reaching a point where prosperity
This agreement is often called the social contract. It is not written in a single document, yet it influences.
Strong societies depend on trust. People accept responsibilities because they believe institutions will uphold their side of the bargain.
Problems begin to emerge when people increasingly feel that the institutions governing their lives no longer understand their struggles.
The greater the distance between institutions and the public, the easier it becomes for trust to erode.
For many people, frustration does not emerge from a single event. It grows gradually through years of unmet expectations.
As trust declines, societies become more vulnerable to division. Citizens begin searching for explanations, and competing narratives rush in to fill the vacuum.
The social contract survives not because systems are perfect, but because people believe those systems can improve and adapt. The fracturing social contract is not a collapse in itself. It is the slow unraveling of trust that makes future. Institutions are the operating systems of civilization. They manage complexity.
Most people rarely think about institutions because successful institutions are almost invisible. Their effectiveness is measured by the absence of chaos.
Over time, institutions accumulate experience, procedures, and traditions designed to solve problems that previous generations once faced.
But institutions can become victims of their own success. Systems built to manage complexity often become increasingly complex themselves. As challenges evolve, institutions sometimes continue solving yesterday's problems while struggling to adapt to tomorrow's realities.
The modern world changes faster than at any point in human history. Institutions designed for stability often find themselves confronting unprecedented rates of change. When institutions fail to adapt, public trust begins to decline. And once trust weakens, even effective decisions become
tentrums. Many civilizations discovered that institutional decay rarely begins with dramatic collapse.
The danger is not simply that institutions make mistakes. The danger emerges when institutions become incapable of recognizing their own weaknesses.
Warning sign number 3 is institutional decay. Not the sudden collapse of authority, but
Every institution begins with a purpose, a solution to a problem. a mechanism designed to create stability. Bureaucracies are created to organize complexity. Yet as they expand, they often generate new layers of complexity that require even more administration to manage. The world changes constantly. The challenge is that institutions built for stability frequently struggle to keep pace with transformation. As problems become more complex, organizations often respond by creating additional rules, additional departments, and additional layers of oversight. The result is a dangerous paradox. The systems designed to respond to reality can become increasingly detached from reality itself.
For ordinary people, institutional rigidity often appears as delays, inefficiency, confusion.
History repeatedly demonstrates that large bureaucracies can become remarkably effective at maintaining procedures while becoming increasingly ineffective at solving emerging problems.
One of the greatest dangers of institutional decay is that warning signs may be visible, yet the system lacks the flexibility required to respond effectively.
Civilizations rarely fail because they lack information. More often, they fail because their institutions become unable to act on the information they already possess.
Bureaucracies become dangerous when preserving the system becomes more important than adapting the system.
Every civilization depends on information. The ability to understand reality, identify threats, and make decisions based on a shared understanding of the world. For most of human history, access to information was limited. Today, information is everywhere, yet abundance has introduced a new and unexpected problem. Modern societies are not suffering from a lack of information. They are struggling to distinguish signal from noise.
As shared sources of information decline, people increasingly inhabit separate informational worlds, each reinforced by algorithms.
The attention economy rewards content that captures emotion. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. Fear travels further than context.
Information becomes increasingly valuable when attention becomes scarce, and wherever value exists, incentives quickly emerge to exploit it.
The consequence is not simply disagreement. Healthy societies have always disagreed. The deeper challenge emerges when
In moments of uncertainty, civilizations rely on trusted information to coordinate action. When trust breaks down, coordination becomes increasingly difficult.
Information breakdown is dangerous. Warning sign number 4 is information breakdown. Not the absence of information, but
human attention has become one of the most valuable resources in modern civilization. And like every valuable resource in history, powerful systems have emerged to compete for it.
For thousands of years, information was scarce. Today, attention is scarce. The balance has completely reversed.
Entire industries are now designed around a single objective: capturing and retaining human attention for as long as possible. Most people believe they are consuming information. In reality, information systems are increasingly competing to consume their attention. Algorithms learn what captures emotion, and over time, they become remarkably effective at delivering exactly the content most likely to hold our focus. The attention economy rewards immediacy over reflection, reaction over analysis, and engagement over understanding.
As attention becomes fragmented, societies struggle to sustain the long-term focus required to solve increasingly complex problems.
Civilizations have always depended on their ability to think beyond the present moment. The challenge is that modern systems increasingly reward living inside the present moment. Danger is not technology itself. The danger emerges when the incentives shaping information ecosystems become misaligned with the long-term interests of society. The attention economy transforms human focus into a commodity, and when attention becomes the product, civilizations risk losing the collective concentration.
Every civilization contains disagreement. Debate is natural. Conflict of ideas can strengthen.
Polarization rarely appears overnight. It grows slowly, reinforced by information systems, social pressures, and throughout history, successful societies depended not on the absence of disagreement, but on the ability to manage disagreement without tearing themselves apart.
As trust declines and shared realities fracture, political identities often become more important than common interests.
Modern information systems reward emotional engagement, and few emotions capture attention more effectively than anger, fear, and tribal loyalty. The more polarized a society becomes, the harder compromise appears. Solutions once viewed as practical begin to look like betrayals. Polarization is not merely a political phenomenon. Over time, it begins reshaping relationships, communities, and the social fabric itself. Many civilizations did not weaken because of external enemies. They weakened because internal divisions consumed the energy needed to address larger threats.
The greatest risk of polarization is not disagreement itself. It is the gradual loss of the mechanisms that allow society.
Warning sign number 5 is political polarization. Not because citizens disagree, but because the ability to find common ground begins to disappear. Civilizations are built from institutions, economies, and technologies. But beneath every system lies something even more powerful: human psychology. For most of human history, survival depended on belonging to a group. Cooperation increased safety. Shared identity strengthened. The same psychological mechanisms that once protected us continue shaping how we interpret the modern world.
As societies become more complex, people naturally seek communities that provide meaning, certainty, and a sense of belonging.
Modern technology has not changed human psychology, it has amplified it, accelerating tendencies that evolved long before the digital age.
Once identity becomes attached to belief, facts alone rarely change minds. Information begins competing with emotion, loyalty, and social belonging. Since many civilizations entered periods of instability, not because they lacked resources or knowledge, but because the danger of division is rarely visible at first. It develops gradually as trust declines and shared identity begins to weaken.
When societies become consumed by internal conflicts, attention is often diverted away from the larger challenges threatening everyone equally.
The psychology of division is powerful because it operates beneath conscious awareness.
Modern civilization depends on systems so reliable that most people rarely think about them. Electricity.
Infrastructure is the physical foundation upon which every economy, institution, and community is built.
Throughout history, great civilizations invested heavily in the systems that connected people, enabled commerce, and supported long-term prosperity.
The challenge is that infrastructure ages slowly. Decline often begins years before visible failure appears.
Because infrastructure operates quietly in the background, maintenance is often delayed in favor of more immediate priorities.
As societies become more advanced, they also become more dependent on uninterrupted infrastructure performance. The more interconnected a civilization becomes, the greater the consequences when even a small part of the system begins to fail.
Civilizations rarely collapse because a single bridge breaks or a single power station fails. The danger emerges when
Infrastructure neglect is dangerous because warning signs often remain invisible until systems reach their limits.
Warning sign number 6 is infrastructure neglect. Not because systems fail overnight, but because civilizations gradually become dependent on foundations they no longer maintain. Every civilization depends on systems that most people never see. Beneath the surface of daily life exists a vast infrastructure network that the systems supporting civilization are often invisible. Their success is measured not by attention, but by their ability to remain unnoticed.
Energy is the lifeblood of modern civilization. Without reliable power, nearly every other system begins to struggle. Global supply chains deliver food, medicine, technology, and essential resources with remarkable efficiency. Information systems have become as essential as physical infrastructure. Entire economies now depend on uninterrupted digital connectivity.
The challenge is not that these systems are weak. The challenge is that they have become deeply interconnected.
In highly connected societies, small failures can travel rapidly through networks designed for efficiency rather than resilience. Throughout history, societies often discovered their vulnerabilities only after critical systems were placed under stress.
Most dangerous weaknesses are rarely obvious. They develop slowly inside systems that appear stable right up until the moment they are tested. Cracks beneath the surface do not guarantee collapse, but they reveal a deeper truth. Modern civilization depends on hidden systems. Every great civilization rises on its ability to solve problems. Innovation transforms scarcity
From agriculture to industry, from medicine to computing, civilizations have repeatedly advanced by creating solutions faster than challenges could emerge.
Innovation is more than technology. It is the ability of a society to adapt, experiment, and discover new ways of overcoming obstacles.
Yet as civilizations mature, innovation often encounters growing resistance from the very systems built during earlier periods of success.
Mature societies frequently become experts at managing existing systems, while becoming less effective at creating entirely new ones.
Many civilizations reached extraordinary levels of sophistication before gradually losing the innovative energy that had originally driven their rise.
The challenge is not simply producing new ideas, it is creating environments where new ideas can successfully replace outdated solutions. As systems become more complex, societies often devote increasing resources to preserving stability rather than pursuing transformation.
Innovation decline rarely appears as technological collapse. It emerges as a gradual reduction in a civilization's ability to solve its most difficult problems. Warning sign number 7 is declining innovation. Not because progress stops entirely, but because societies become increasingly dependent on breakthroughs that arrive less frequently. Complexity is often mistaken for strength. The more advanced a civilization becomes, the more impressive. Every stage of civilization adds new layers of organization, technology, specialization, and coordination. Modern civilization operates through an intricate web of systems so interconnected that few individuals fully understand how the whole structure functions. Complexity increases efficiency because specialized systems perform tasks with remarkable precision, but specialization also creates new vulnerabilities.
In highly complex systems, small disturbances can trigger consequences far beyond their original source.
History reveals a recurring pattern. As societies become more sophisticated, the cost of maintaining that sophistication continues to rise.
Eventually, civilizations can reach a point where more resources are spent sustaining complexity than generating new resilience.
The danger is not that complexity creates weakness. The danger is that complexity can conceal weakness until stress exposes it. The more interconnected systems become, the more difficult it becomes to predict how they will respond when unexpected disruptions occur. The limits of complexity do not appear when systems are functioning normally. Every empire believes its dominance is unique. Every empire believes it has solved the problems that destroyed those that came before. At its peak, Rome appeared unstoppable. Its economy, military, infrastructure, and political influence extended across much of the known world. For missions. Yet beneath the surface, familiar warning signs were already beginning to emerge. Rising debt, wealth.
The larger an empire becomes, the more resources it requires simply to sustain itself.
Prosperity often masks underlying vulnerabilities. Success creates confidence, and confidence can delay recognition of emerging risks. The names change, the technologies change, the cultures change, yet the patterns often remain remarkably familiar. Most empires do not collapse because they suddenly become weak. They decline because internal pressures gradually exceed their ability to adapt. Expansion is often easier than maintenance. Building power is frequently simpler than preserving it across generations. The most dangerous phase of empire is not weakness. It is the moment when strength. The empire pattern is not a prophecy, it is a reminder. Civilizations may differ in countless ways. Previous civilizations rose and declined within regional boundaries. Trade, finance, energy, communication, and technology now operate across borders with unprecedented speed and complexity. The modern world functions as an interconnected system, where decisions made in one region can influence lives thousands of kilometers away. Globalization created extraordinary prosperity by linking markets, resources, and talent on a scale never before achieved.
But interconnected systems create a new challenge. Resilience becomes increasingly dependent on the stability of.
In previous centuries, crises were often localized. Today, disturbances can travel through global systems with remarkable speed.
Humanity has never been more connected. Yet connection does not automatically guarantee stability.
The greater the scale of integration, the more difficult it becomes to predict how interconnected systems will respond during periods of stress. Global civilization has achieved extraordinary efficiency. The question is whether efficiency alone can provide sufficient resilience when unexpected shocks emerge. The globalized civilization represents humanity's greatest achievement in coordination and cooperation. But it also introduces a new reality.
Money moves faster than armies, and faster than governments, and faster than almost any force in human history.
Financial markets were designed to allocate resources, manage risk, and support economic growth. Yet the same connections that create efficiency can also transmit instability. Every loan, investment, and transaction creates relationships. Over time, those relationships evolve into a tightly interconnected web of obligations.
Throughout history, financial disruptions have often revealed weaknesses that remained invisible during periods of prosperity.
In interconnected systems, disturbances rarely remain isolated. The effects can travel rapidly through channels built to maximize speed and efficiency. Modern finance depends on technology, trust, and confidence. Remove any one of those foundations, and the system begins facing extraordinary pressure.
Financial systems are not separate from society. They influence employment, investment, infrastructure, innovation, and nearly every aspect of daily life.
Danger is not merely financial loss. The danger emerges when interconnected risks create consequences far beyond their original source. During stable periods, financial systems appear calm. Yet beneath the surface, invisible pressures can accumulate for years before becoming visible.
Financial shockwaves are dangerous because they travel through the very networks that make modern prosperity possible. Modern civilization appears stronger than ever before. Technology advances, markets function, cities expand.
Most people experience civilization through routine. Lights turn on, goods arrive, services function.
But appearances can be deceptive. Stability is often not the absence of pressure. It is the successful management of pressure.
Beneath the surface, vast numbers of people work continuously to prevent disruptions from becoming crises. The challenge is that many forms of fragility remain invisible until they are tested.
History offers a sobering lesson. Societies often appear strongest shortly before their underlying vulnerabilities become impossible to ignore.
Fragility does not mean collapse is inevitable. It means that resilience may be weaker than appearances suggest.
The more interconnected systems become, the more difficult it becomes to identify which vulnerabilities matter most.
The age of fragility is defined by a growing gap between appearance and reality, between what societies see and the...
Civilization has never been more advanced, more connected, or more capable. Throughout history, civilizations have relied on innovation to overcome their greatest challenges. Today, modern societies generate more information than any civilization before them. Artificial intelligence promises to transform that information into insight, prediction, and control. Across the world, technology is helping solve problems that once appeared impossible. Diseases are being treated, productivity is increasing. As complexity increases, technology becomes essential not only for progress, but for maintaining the stability of existing systems. Every generation has believed its most powerful technologies would secure the future. Sometimes they did. Sometimes they created entirely new challenges.
Technology can solve problems, but it can also create new forms of risk. The repentance.
The question is no longer whether technology influences civilization. The question is how deeply civilization becomes dependent upon it. Artificial stability emerges when technological systems become responsible for managing pressures that institutions once handled themselves. The danger is not that technology fails to work. The danger is believing that technology alone can solve problems rooted in artificial stability may extend the lifespan of complex systems. It may reduce risks, improve efficiency, and help societies adapt. Civilizations rarely collapse the moment a warning sign appears. Most continue functioning for years, sometimes decades, while deeper pressures quietly accumulate beneath the surface. The danger is not a single problem. It is the accumulation of many problems whose combined effects eventually exceed the system's ability to absorb them. Each warning sign may appear manageable on its own. Together, they create pressures that reinforce one another in unexpected ways. History suggests that decline often follows a familiar pattern. Stability persists longer than expected, then change arrives faster than anyone imagined. One of the greatest challenges facing complex societies is recognizing when gradual change has become systemic change.
Tipping points occur when systems become so interconnected that responses begin amplifying pressures rather than absorbing them.
Major transformations often appear sudden, but they are usually the result of forces that have been developing for years beneath the surface.
Most people experience tipping points only after they have already been crossed.
The critical question is not whether a civilization faces challenges. Every civilization does. The question is how much pressure. The tipping point is not a specific event. It is the invisible threshold where accumulated pressures begin reshaping the future.
The future is rarely determined by a single event. It emerges from countless decisions, pressures, and adaptations unfolding across time. One possible future is stagnation. Not dramatic collapse, but a prolonged period in which growth slows, innovation weakens. Another possibility is systemic crisis, where multiple warning signs converge and force rapid change across economies, governments, and societies. Yet history also demonstrates another path. Civilizations can adapt when they recognize challenges early enough to respond effectively.
Renewal often begins with problem solving. The same creativity that built civilization can help reshape it.
Many societies survived periods that once seemed impossible to overcome. Their success depended on adaptation rather than preservation of the status quo.
The challenge is that civilizations rarely know which path they are taking while events are unfolding.
The future is not shaped only by governments or institutions. It is influenced by millions of choices made across society every day.
The warning signs we have explored do not guarantee any specific outcome. They reveal risks, not destinies. The future scenarios remain unwritten. Collapse, stagnation, adaptation, or renewal are not predictions. History is often described as a record of the past. But for civilizations, history is something more powerful. Each civilization believed its circumstances were unique. Yet when viewed across long periods of time, familiar patterns begin to emerge. Summits. Many societies did not fail because they lacked intelligence, resources, or ambition. They struggled because One of history's most consistent lessons is that leaders often recognize immediate threats while overlooking slower-moving structural changes. Expansion created opportunities, but it also created obligations. The greater the complexity of a civilization. Civilizations often invest heavily in building systems. Their greater challenge is preserving those systems across generations.
What makes history valuable is not its ability to predict the future. Its value lies in revealing recurring patterns.
The civilizations that adapted successfully were often those willing to confront uncomfortable realities before those realities became unavoidable.
History's greatest lesson may be that decline is rarely inevitable. But ignoring warning signs makes decline far more likely.
The lessons of history are not instructions, they are opportunities. Every civilization inherits the successes and failures of those that came before.
Civilization has never been more advanced, more connected, or more powerful than it is today. None of the warning signs exist in isolation. Together, they form a larger picture of the pressures shaping the future beneath the surface of everyday life.
The most important lesson is not that civilization faces risks. Every civilization in history faced risks. The lesson is that risks become dangerous when societies stop. The people living through history rarely know they are standing at a turning point. Most have experienced change gradually.
In company. Yet history also reveals something equally important. Human societies possess an extraordinary ability to
The future is not determined solely by the warning signs. It is shaped by how societies respond to them.
Every generation inherits a choice: preserve failing assumptions or adapt to changing realities.
The warning signs are valuable not because they predict the future, but because they provide an opportunity to change it. The story of civilization has never been a story of perfection. It has always been a story of adaptation, resilience, and the continual search for better solutions. The final warning is not that civilization will decline. The final warning is that no civilization is